Welcome to today's episode of the Head of the Race podcast. I am your host, Maya, and today we're talking about the third stage of the Vuelta España 2023. And today's stage, it did not disappoint. At first, I was like kind of maybe thinking, it's not that exciting, it's not, as good. It was very chaotic. It was kind of like, even though the rain stopped and there wasn't as much chaos going on in the peloton because by the weather, definitely there was still some nerves going around because it really didn't feel like all the teams were kind of like, who's going to be pulling, who's going to be controlling, who's going to be doing this. So I was really interested. But later on, I feel like the finish, like the last 5Ks, really kind of solidified this as a pretty good stage to me. Personally, I think that because I like that kind of like chaotic moment at the end where you're like not sure who's going to win and everybody's kind of together and the GC guys are kind of together. So I was really, really excited. So today's stage started in Surya and we finished at in Arsenal in Andorra. So of course that meant we're going to be climbing. There's going to be some climbing going on. And the main two climbs today were Col di Ordovino. Sorry if I'm butchering this. I cannot speak Spanish whatsoever. It's a 17.5 kilometer climb with an average of 4.9%. So to the guys like the pros, it's not going to be as bad for them. It's not that kind of stage where like the sprinters and the maybe not climbers are not going to be absolutely dead. Like they cannot survive this kind of stage. But it was still a pretty nice place to do that first selection. For like the GC teams could maybe push the pedals a little bit harder so they could do a bit of a selection where, they kind of got rid of the guys that did not want at the bottom of the Arsenal, the climb up to Arsenal, basically, in Andorra. And that climb was definitely more interesting, but we're going to get into that in a second. The coverage basically started with 94 kilometers to go, but before that, there was a bunch of attacks. The first attack was of 3 riders, a little rider, an Alpecin rider, and an Intermarché rider, but that break got cut up. It was basically like at the beginning of the stage, EF was closing some of the attacks. They were pulling at the front. They have Piccolo in the red jersey. So, of course, they want to keep the red jersey for as long as they can. And not just because, you have the red jersey, but also because for a smaller team like EF, who doesn't have that high budget, they definitely want to keep the jersey for as long as they can because it's intriguing to sponsors. You're visible in the race. Everybody's showing you. Although I do not think the race organizers showed Piccolo that much. I thought they would show him maybe a little bit more, but they definitely could have done that a little bit more. But of course, we know that Piccolo is in the red jersey. He's the leader, and that is a really nice thing for a team like EF to have. So they were closing some of the attacks, so they thought maybe it was maybe dangerous or something like that. But after that, another attack kind of happened. And that was of course, a few attacks happened. They were closed. We did not see that. It's like, I can tell you, these guys attacked. This happened. They closed it, of course. But, do you want to hear me say names of 5 riders and how they closed? But, there was a bunch of attacks. Sepulveda, especially, he attacked a few times. And, of course, that kind of paid off because he did end up in that main rider group that managed to get away from the peloton. So I feel like that kind of that was a good decision by him. Basically, that's what I want to say. But the group that actually ended up kind of going away, that I thought was a really strong group, because they had Caruso in there, who, if you don't know, Caruso is just an incredible rider. I feel like he's one of those riders that he's kind of underrated because, we know that he's amazing and he can do these incredible things. We all remember Giro 2021. He actually put up a really great fight to Egan Bernal, which, of course, at that point, Egan was a really, really strong rider. I feel like he said in a bunch of interviews that he felt that Giro was one of those really strong performances by him. So I do feel like Damian Caruso is a really good rider that does not get as much credit as I think he deserves. But other than that, there was also Kemna in that group, which I think, of course, he's a strong guy. Like, he has won a Tour stage, a Giro stage. He's not one to play with. And I was like, oh, this is a really strong group. And also there was Latour in there, but he ended up being one of those, like, he's a big name, but he didn't end up being really that strong in that group. So that was really interesting because I thought he maybe could have done a bit more. But you're a cyclist. It's not, you don't get to decide if you're feeling well, if you're feeling strong enough. But it just kind of happens because it was really, really, really interesting to see. And also, like I said, Sepulveda ended up breaking away with that group, and it paid off in the end, kind of. He did not win the stage, but, you still get something. You still get a moment of glory, which I think we may sometimes think, yeah, he's not winning the stage. He's not in that jersey. He's not doing really anything that we can see on, in the history books. But still, for that person's head per se, it's really good to have that little moment when you are winning something in that big race like the Vuelta a España. So basically, when the coverage started, there was the GC group, like the peloton, was not really chasing as much. Of course, Jumbo was pulling for the whole day. Basically, Dylan van Baarle was putting on a strong pace, not maybe a strong pace, but he was the one who was in the front, and he was pulling, and he was definitely, you could see him in the front most of the time. Because when I was watching the stage, when we started, the break had like 4:15 minutes ahead of the peloton, which I thought, hey, it's pretty good. But actually, and I thought, yeah, but it's like 94 Ks to go. The peloton is gonna catch them pretty soon. But it actually ended up not being as maybe easy as I thought it would be. Of course, the peloton didn't end up catching them, which at some point, I think it was like 7 Ks to go. 7 Ks to go. I was like, I don't think they're actually going to catch them. And they end up catching them. But still, I thought that it was going to be a little bit, more straightforward. But we're going to get into that in a second. I think the team dynamic ended up being really chaotic. But, that's what happens. There was a bit of work from Quickstep in the front, but it was like the Polish commentators even said that they came up to the front, but they weren't really doing anything. There was a moment also where Castroviejo and Bernal went to the front, which was like, yeah, they're doing something, but they're not really doing their pulls, like they're not really going all out there. They were kind of like going to the front, but not really, and kind of, it wasn't that moment what you can see. Because, for example, we saw Dylan van Baarle at the front for a really long time, and he was really pulling. So that was like, Jumbo wanted to kind of control it, and it was definitely visible. I feel like Jonas wanted to go for the stage. I feel like for this stage, Primož is the better fit for this kind of stage, because you don't have that grueling, really high altitude, long climb. That kind of is a kind of thing that a rider like Jonas wants. It was a bit, we do a long, not as hard climb, then we descent. And the descent of this stage was really, really important. And I feel like it's not talked about enough how important the descent itself was for the stage, because on this kind of stage, the descent literally ends and the climb starts immediately after that. Because this is a stage where positioning on the descent is just like, it's super, super important. Because if you're in the back and when the peloton, the group at that point starts pulling, and you're in the back, you're going to feel that pull twice as hard as the guys in the front. So it's really, really important to be as close to the front on that descent as you can possibly be. So I feel like that was that kind of thing, which I didn't really hear a lot of talking, but I personally think that the descent was just really important, and how you did on the descent was just, I think, a really, really important part. But back to what I was saying, pretty much throughout the whole flat part and the arrival to the to the intermediate sprints, Remco was pretty high in the group. He was positioned like fourth, I feel like, and I thought that was like, I thought it was good. I thought it was good because when you see that kind of thing, you're not just thinking this guy is like, he wants to win, he wants to go for the stage, all that, but you're thinking he's racing really smart because he's kind of protecting himself from being attacked immediately. You know, you can see that he's like basically what you would say in a weird way locked in, you know, like you can see that he's kind of like thinking, he's trying to figure out his plan. He's kind of trying to, you know, maybe position himself in a way that's good for him, blah, blah, blah. So I really like that. I definitely noticed it. I definitely noticed it that whenever Quickstep kind of went to the front, which like I said, their pools were really short. Of course, they were longer than the Ineos pools, were practically not existent. Like the Ineos guys went to the front, kind of did some, you know, half wheeling. They kind of did that, but then they kind of like went right back. It was really weird. I just kind of noticed that. It's also like kind of with, you know, Ineos is that kind of team that usually has these weird kind of like tactics. They sometimes do something interesting, which I think is like, yeah, what they're doing here is pretty nice. I like this tactic. I feel like it's good, but then you're like, then they do something really stupid, and I just don't get it. Maybe not stupid, but I feel like I just didn't get their little pulling moments, which were not really like actually doing any work in the front. But okay. And like I said, Remco was just really high up there. You can see that. And with about 55.8 kilometers, Quickstep went to the front and the pace kind of went up because there was a point where the peloton was not really chasing this much, because you can see the gap was just not really, it wasn't really going. Like the gap was like 4 something, and they kind of went down to like a 4, then it kind of got up back to a 4, and then it kind of went down to a 350. So that's when Quickstep kind of like, you know, went to the front. They kind of did some work. They kind of, you know, did a little bit in the front. But then I also remembered that I was like thinking, what is Jumbo going to do? Because Jonas said before the stage that it's really early to say this, but if this is a key stage, but it can always turn out to be. We need to be aware today. So that's what I was like thinking. Are they trying to go really defensive today? Are they trying to go for a pre-match win? I was really just, you know, thinking what is kind of their plan. But, you know, they were controlling. Like Dylan was there, 45Ks to go, and he did a really strong pull at one point. Like he really went there. To that, you know, he was pulling. But also another thing that's really important to add, there was a lot of headwind today, which I think kind of may have had a little effect on the stage, because, you know, a rider is not going to pull really, really hard on it. Kind of, you know, it's like a situation where riders are not sure what to really do, because you're like, I want to attack, I want to break away from the guys in the back, like, you know, but you're also thinking like, but what if my attack kind of backfires, because the head was going to kill me, they're going to work in the back of me, and I'm going to be dead by that point. They're just going to catch up to me, and I'm going to be regretting my own decision, my own attack, my own, you know, the thought process. But, you know, that's I think that might have affected some of the race a tiny bit, but we never know. I feel like it might have, especially the way Kemna was attacking later on, because he wasn't really attacking that high up. He was attacking rather like on the lower part of the climb. And also then we at some point got this like, at 40Ks to go, something like that, we got a little look at the top of basically at the finish line, and the wind was going absolutely insane. Like, I remember thinking, wow, this Vuelta is just madness. Like, what is going on? Like, the wind was going absolutely insane. It was like this, there was like some sort of I don't know the word in English. I think it's called something like I remember now. It's an umbrella. So there was like an umbrella that was just absolutely like, it whammed into something else, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be absolutely crazy. By the time these guys arrived there, I was just like, I was hoping for the best. And actually, I don't feel like nothing really that crazy happened. Maybe not during the race, because after the finish line, there was some craziness, but we all know. Then pretty much like 38 Ks to go. There was a bunch of like, there was some sort of groups that created in the front. So you had Groupama, who basically like, I was so confused by this move because they like went to the front, were there for like 30 seconds and just went right to the back. I feel like it was positioning, but then they kind of like went right back to the back again. So I was really confused. Bora, of course, wanted to go to the front because a team like Bora right now is going to think, yeah, we have a guy who's strong, of course, in the breakaway. So why don't we go to the front, try and mess up the strategies of other teams, trying to just, as much as we can, help our guy in the front and just, whatever we can do to help him try and keep as much time away from, because when a team like Yambo starts pulling, where a team like UAE starts pulling, you're done by that point. If they really, really work you, like you're done. So when your team can kind of interfere in that pool as much as they can, they're going to use that opportunity. And I feel like Bora was trying to do that because they kind of went to the front. I don't feel like they were as sufficient, but of course, a team like Yambo or like UAE is not going to allow you to really do that because you're messing up their plan. Like you are messing up their, whole idea. Because today was that kind of stage where getting the red jersey was really, really easy. Like it was just the time gaps are not that big. The finish is not that kind of finish where there's like two guys at the top of the climb. There's going to be a bit of a group at the top. So you're like trying to think strategically at this point. You're not going to just go out and try to ride your guy full out, because also he's not going to drop any like a Jonas or a Primoz, because the peak a percentage of the climbs, I feel like it was around on the last climb, I feel like it was around like 10 something, 11%, I don't know. So for these kind of people, 11% is just not going to be enough to drop if the tempo was also not that high for the day. We also don't know, because sometimes the commentators are saying, yeah, they're going really fast. This is like a new thing where they're going to the front. There's a lot of them, but they're going really fast, but you're not really seeing a selection. But I feel like the tempo was not as high as sometimes it can be. Maybe later it did get hectic and crazy, and the tempo was really, it was going really, really, really hard. And that, 38K point till the finish line, no team was really adamant to do any work. Like, you see Hiev going to the front for a little bit, and then you see Ineos going to the front again, and some quick step riders, some UAE riders, but you did not see any team really going like hard. They were not really going, they were not really pulling, they were not really trying. Bora also went to the front again, and then DSM really showed out. And I really like this move by DSM, because I feel like it was something like, we know Bardet is not going for GC. He's not really, because he said himself, he's not really going for GC. So you're like, but we want the red jersey. He's really close to the red jersey. Piccolo, by that point, he has not dropped yet by that point. But, Piccolo is going to drop. We all know that. And Bardet has a really not big time gap to Piccolo. So we're just going to try and do something here so we can get the red jersey, or maybe even the stage win. So they were really going in. They were really, really going in. And around that point also there was the intermediate sprint, and Vendrame won the intermediate sprint, which they didn't really even show on my screens. Like, they just showed who won, and I was like, yeah, great, thank you so much for that one, guys. That was really great. And like 35 kilometers to go, DSM goes to the front, and they're like, you can see they're going, like, they're pulling at it. They're not really dropping as many people, because the group kind of didn't really get as small as sometimes you would expect a group to get with like a really strong pull. It did not get reduced as much, but DSM was really, they were working. And while that was happening at the front of the race, Jose Manuel Diaz attacked, which he did not, end up really doing anything with his attack for himself, but his attack kind of triggered another attack, which was the Damian Caruso attack, like pull, like, And that attack ended up being the one that kind of ended up being the going away one. So I feel like that was really interesting to see. Damian Caruso was the one who decided to just, it's time to go. It's time to select this group a little bit. It's time to try and do something for the KOM points, like I feel like that was also interesting. He ended up going with Kemna. He ended up going with Sepulveda. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name, but it's a really hard name to pronounce. And also I think the Trek rider ended up going with them, but I'm not really sure because he kind of like dropped really quickly afterwards. But yeah. And then there was like this moment where Robert Gessing really started to go with like 8Ks to go to the top of the climb. He really started to he did a really, really hard pull. And of course, I'm not talking about the last climb. I'm talking about Col di Ordino, this climb. And his pull kind of like did do a little bit of a selection. He actually ended up kind of creating a little bit of a gap, which I thought was really interesting. And I was like, yeah, that's when it kind of felt like they I feel like they're trying to do something here. Like they're not just going for the jersey. I feel like they want to perhaps win this stage, perhaps. But I wasn't really that sure. And then DSM kind of goes to the front again. They're going really hard, and I remember seeing the DSM rider, and I remember thinking like, yeah, like I was like, these guys, like these cyclists, they are just absolute monsters because he was like, you can see in his face that he's absolutely exhausted, and he's just going hard, like he's not giving up whatsoever. Like he is just going through his pain. He's breaking the barrier, and I just have so much respect for those kind of people because you can think, yeah, this guy's the strongest, this guy's the fastest, but I feel like cyclists are athletes that are the ones that really break the mental barrier because their sport kind of consists of them going against their pain in a really, like, this is the most important part of cycling. Who is the guy who can suffer the longest and the hardest? And who is the guy who's able to, of course, biology, genetics, all that comes into place. But also, there's that part. Which one of us can just kind of survive the pain the most? Which one is not the fastest, the strongest, but who is the guy who can just kind of grit his teeth and who can absolutely go out of their way and try and kind of kill themselves on this climb as much as they possibly can. So seeing that, I always get reminded in these kind of moments that these people, these men and women, of course, because the women's cycling is just amazing. This year's Vuelta, like the female Vuelta, I loved it. I remember watching the Giro, the man Giro. I wasn't even that entertained with that one, of course, except for the time trial, because that was just that was amazing. Of course, like no, everybody knows that was amazing, especially if you're a Primož fan like I am. And the female Vuelta was just amazing, but these athletes, what they can do with their bodies and with their minds, I just always have the utmost respect, because from my perspective as someone who also was an athlete, who also participated, I was never, a standout. I was, I kind of like did some Polish champs in triathlon, but I was never, really doing anything. Maybe I did podium on like a little race, but it was, I wasn't really a master. And I feel like I really struggled with sometimes the mental side. And I just think seeing these guys is kind of reminding you of how important a good mindset and a head and the mental strength is. And I just love it. I just love to see it, and I feel like it's really amazing. And then DSM is just really going at it. Like, they're going at it. They kind of do create a selection. They kind of do that, you can see that riders are dropping off. And then there was this move who also was not shown on the TV, which I was so mad about because I was really interested, because it was a really unexpected, maybe a weird move at some point. And Jay Vine kind of did like a little pool, and Bardet, and I don't know who that was. I do not remember. I think it was Vilko Kerdeman. I am not sure. They went with him, and they kind of like did a pool. J Vine really went there, and like they created like a, I don't know, 100-meter gap from the peloton, but then it kind of just, got kind of, connected back. Then Jumbo were pulling again after that mini attack from J Vine. They were like, yeah, it's time for us. Like, we're gonna do a hard pull. We're gonna really work, like Robert Guessing went to the front. You can see, he was really going at it. And then Romain Bardet did like a really nice attack with 2K left to the top. And I remember watching this and I was like, wow, that's a really big gap. He created a big gap really, maybe not easily, but that gap was created it was a really big gap in a really short amount of time. And that could have possibly maybe went somewhere because, it's 2Ks to go. You're writing, you're going to do the descent, try to pull away from the group. But then Wilco Kelderman ended up bridging across to Robin Bardet, and he was so mad. And I do not blame him, because he was like, if you are going to be here, why not like work with me or do something with me? Because right now you're kind of, they might have let me go, they might have let me do something, but if you're in the front, they're not going to let me do anything. The Remco is going to make quick step pull. They're not going to allow you to go out. Like, they're just not going to let that happen. So why are you doing this? So he was obviously mad at Wilco. And then you could see Remco, I think he was like about fourth in the peloton. And he was like, you can see that he wanted a quick step to close that gap, which is obvious. Like, you don't want these two guys going out together, especially Wilco and Jumbo Visma. It's just, it's like, it's not good for your race. And then we saw the KOM points. I don't know how to say it. It's like the intermediate climb point. I don't know, but that moment. And I remember I thought it was really nice. I thought it was really interesting because basically Damian Caruso went. He disconnected himself from Kemna, and at that point, I remember thinking, is Kemna really not able to hold his rear, or is he just kind of like thinking, okay, I do not really care for the KOM, but I want to have enough legs for the attack. So I feel like that was that. I feel like he just wasn't, he wasn't really that adamant about trying to get the points. I feel like he was just trying to preserve himself as much as he can. So I thought that was the case. And then we saw this little thing where Caruso kind of like looked to his right. He was trying to see if Kemna was maybe there or someone else was there, and he looked to his like the back of him to the right, and Sepulveda kind of like went on the left of him, and he kind of like, he didn't see him because he was looking to the right. He was like, yeah, I'm good. Like, I got this. And he did not see him. And that was so hilarious because he did not answer to him at all. Like, you could see that he could not see him. And it was like, yeah, I'm just going to win this little, intermediate KOM points. And, no, you're not going to win it. You're getting 6 points. You're not getting the 10 points. I'm sorry. And then a quick step went to the front for a little bit after that little attack, like I said. But, I feel like they were just trying to use the descent. And like I said, this descent, not only was it really important because it was descent, immediately after descent, the uphill. The final climb, important. You want to win the stage, you have to be in the front. You cannot let yourself be in the back. Positioning, of course. Like, that was obvious. But also, this climb was really hard. I feel like it was wet. On the TV, it kind of looked like maybe it was kind of dried out. Maybe it wasn't that bad. But I feel like there was a bit of water still there. That wetness on that, basically on the ground. You still kind of saw that. There was something, maybe some puddles or maybe some moments like that. And then also the climb in its the descent in itself was just a really fast and a really dangerous descent. The last two 1.5 Ks, I feel like, that's the point where you can go really fast, really lose it, and you can just kind of, have to step back, one step, and, kind of like relax, like we don't want this to end up being too dangerous. So I feel like that's also that Quick Step wanted to make sure that Remco was in the front. We all know, I feel like from my observation, I don't feel like he's that big of a fan of descent, especially when you consider, his accident way back when. And also just the fact that some people have a different mentality. Some people love descending. Like, you can just see that I'm enjoying this. Like, I love to do this. Like, I'm just like, I want to go as fast as I can. But some people are kind of, more on the reserved side. Especially, I think of Remco as a person who really values, and I love that, the safety of riders. I feel like he's one of those guys who just like, we can go really, really hard on the ascent when we're riding up the mountain, but I don't really want to go really that hard on the descents. I just want to show what I can do when I'm climbing, because why risk my life? This is like what we saw with Pogacar in the 2022, sorry, where he fell down and basically at some point he was like, I'm not going to be attacking anymore on the descent. Like, this is stupid. This is risky. So, yeah. And then, Quick Steps at the front, they were not really going as quickly. I feel like Damian Caruso was doing really nice on the descent. I feel like he's a good descender. Especially after the group, he was the best descender for sure. Like, he completely, at some point, like, Sepulveda was almost like getting dropped. I feel like I don't remember if he ended up getting dropped on the descent or what it was, but, he was really, really going on the descent. And the GC group was kind of like, keeping kind of a distance, they weren't really catching up. It wasn't really that, intense. And then we start the final ascent, into Andorra, into that, like not into Andorra, but, it's kind of like, into Andorra. So we start the final ascent. Kemna attacks almost immediately, like he attacked really quickly. He attacked whilst they were still in the town part of the climb, not really in the forest, basically, from what I'm saying. He kind of attacked really early, which I feel like I said, I feel like it was because of the headwind. Also, I feel like he was trying to, because Caruso, he's an older rider. He has maybe a bit more knowledge, and he's trying to wear him out. Possibly. He's like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do this. I feel like, that's what he was thinking at this moment. Then Jumbo kind of goes to the front again. UAE does some work as well, but they're next to them. Positioning. I feel like it was all positioning into the climb. I don't feel like it was really doing any sort of work because the gap was steady. And at some point, even the gap was kind of like going down. That's when I thought no one wants to basically work. No one really wants to do the work, go to the front and chase the guys in the front. So they were like, they were kind of like looking at each other like, are you gonna do this? They were like going on the radios. No one really wanted to do the work. And then Kemna attacked again, and it was at about 6Ks to go, and he kind of created a gap from Caruso, and it was like, a steady gap, which he attacked. He created the gap, but Caruso wasn't dropping any further. He was like kind of riding at the same pace as Kemna, but he wasn't really going up to his wheel again. So, that's kind of like those moments where you're like, it's mentally difficult to kind of, do that. You're like, I want to chase this guy, but like, I can't really get him. But it's definitely better to do that than, get dropped immediately. But, And then Ineos also went to the front, positioning again. I feel like it was all positioning. But then a really significant moment happened where Jay Vine went to the front and he did a freaking killer pull. Like, he completely destroyed. Like, the whole the peloton, like, it got absolutely shredded. Like, it got shredded. No one's alive. Like, we're all dead. We're done. Like, he's doing the pull, and who survives. I feel like that was just so impressive because Jay Vine's this guy who's like not that big of a name yet. He just came to UAE. And I feel like he's just such a strong rider. When I saw his pool and he looked so good. Like he wasn't at all, sometimes when you see riders pulling, you can see that they're really suffering. And I feel like he wasn't really on the limit as much. I feel like he did a really good pull without really wearing himself out. And Juan Ayuso, definitely, they were trying to set up a stage win for him. At some point, we did not see how many Ks to go, how many, minutes do the guys have to each other. It was just all, it was just kind of like, we don't know. So we kind of didn't know if they're catching up to the guys, if they're catching up to Caruso, if they're catching up to Kemna. So at that point, you just kind of, guess. But when we saw that Javine pull, it was kind of obvious they were getting close. Because if Javine pulls this hard and you can see the GC guys dropping like flies, they're getting close to them. It. Even at some point, like Joao Almeida, he ended up leaving a bit of a gap. He dropped the wheel of a quick step rider who was it was like Remco, there was a rider, and then there was like Almeida, and you can see that he was suffering today. Like he did not look that good. Juan Ayuso definitely looked better. Jonas was pretty much in the like top, and he was really not trying to go really that deep. I feel like Primož was not positioned well in this stage. I feel like his positioning was just really messy. Like every single moment, I feel like this guy has to make up like 10 guys in front of him whenever an attack happens, which is so bad because this kind of finish is really good for him. Like this is a punchy little finish where he can finish at the top and he can use this kind of explosiveness, and I feel like that was just kind of wasted because of positioning, and I feel like that was a big mistake. At some point I was like even like kind of scratching my head because he was like Kuz was behind him and then he gotta like switch places with him. I feel like this is creating a bunch of unwanted messiness that you do not want in this kind of situation when you can see Jay Vine doing this monster pull and absolutely dropping everybody. Then Kemna attacked again. He created another gap, and at that point he pretty much dropped Caruso, and it was like, I feel like at that point he knew he was done. But we didn't really know if Kemna was going to survive because there was like no time. Like we did not know how much time does he have in front of the GC guys, and Jayvon was really going. Like you could see the guys, suffering. And then kind of out of nowhere, Enric Mas kind of went to the front, and I feel like he was pretty much invisible for the whole day. Like you can barely see him at the front. Movistar also basically like they were pretty much non-existent on the stage. Like you could barely see them in the front, so it was like kind of unexpected to see them. And then the GC guys, like the main group, caught up to Caruso. We do not know how close that was to the finish. Still Javon in the front, still pulling. And then pretty much right after they caught up to Caruso, Juan Ayuso attacked. He attacked on like this. Sorry, I do not know my sides. It was the left corner. I don't know. I don't remember that much, but he attacked on the corner. It was like a steeper section. You can even see on the camera that it was a steeper section. Of course, he's going to attack on the steeper ones because why wouldn't he? And Jonas Vingegaard answers pretty much immediately, and then Sepp Kuss kind of, he kind of went for it, but then he was like, he looked at Primož and he kind of helped Primož get back there, but then immediately after on the next corner, Sepp Kuss himself attacks, which is like GC Kuss. I feel like everyone was so freaking excited. My whole I was telling my boyfriend, I was like, oh my god, like Kuss is attacking. Like you can see maybe he's gonna, he's in Andorra, he lives there. Everyone is excited. I was like, yeah, let's go Kuss. I really want to see this. I was so excited. That really didn't go anywhere, but the moment of excitement was still there. So I was really excited. And then, Ayuso kind of went right back to the GC group. But then Soler also attacked. He kind of was pulling up to Kuss, but then he kind of like dropped again. But then he ended up attacking again himself when Kuz dropped back to the GC group on also one of the more steeper sections. It was on like the 10% section, and he ended up actually creating a bit of a gap, but also that did not end up going anywhere because Sepp at that point was like, yeah, like I feel like he at that point realized, yeah, if I wasn't able to drop them on the climb right there, I don't feel like this is for me. Like I don't feel like I'm going to get the stage, but I can try and help like Jonas or Primož. So he went to the front. He started creating the pace. He started really going there. Another selection. That at that point you can see Almeida was just on like in the second group, and also, there were no Ineos riders. I pretty much started doing, like, recording this almost immediately after the stage. And I was, like, thinking, like, where is Geraint Thomas? I could not see him. Also, it's, like, a pretty often, like, a pretty, typical thing for me where I just, like, sometimes he, like, gets lost on me. I feel like he's not that aggressive, of course. He rides typically, like, he just... defense. He's not really that, he's not really usually the attacker. So he kind of gets lost on me. But today was like, I don't know where he was. I feel like he was in the second group behind the main group, but I really can't tell you. Also, there was like no Ineos guys there. Like they were just, gone. And then, I was also looking at Moss because I feel like, yeah, maybe Moss can do something here. Pretty much, no. Like, he was behind Soler. He was behind Ayuso. He was kind of like boxing in a weird way, positioning completely. It was like his window was out of the way. Like, you can see, even if he had the best legs in the world, I feel like the position was just too bad. Like, he cannot do anything there. And then we were kind of like looking at each other. Sepp Kuss was kind of pacing the whole group. He was at the front, but everyone is like, who's going to attack first? And then Remco Evenepoel ends up doing an absolute monster attack. No one can answer. Jonas tries to go with him, but why? Like, why you're doing this? Yeah, of course I know where he's doing this, but like, you're not going to be able to win with Remco. You can see he's definitely that more explosive. You can see that the lack of explosiveness from Jonas hurts him, because you can see that with Pogacar, you can see that with Remco, you can see that lack of explosiveness just is gonna keep on hurting him, especially when you have some time to gain. A second turns into 5 turns into 10, all that. So why waste the time? The lack of explosiveness is hurting him, but of course, he's that kind of rider. What can you do? But that attack from Remco, it was just a monster attack. Loved seeing it. Loved seeing him celebrate. He was like, he put that face like, yeah, I'm the man. I'm the man. If you thought I cannot compete with Jonas, I cannot compete with Primož, well, look at me now. What I just did right here. And I feel like that was Jumbo's race to lose, and they did lose it. Like, I feel like they were just like going hard the whole day. I feel like they have the best possible strategies you can do. You have a guy who can just, be explosive, but then you have a guy who can, climb. And of course, both of them can climb, but Primož has that finish. And I feel like it was theirs to lose. They were controlling. They were doing, the Robert Guessing attack, the pulls. They were doing the Sepp Kuss attacks, which were not specifically for GC, but for the stage win. But still, you're doing something. You're trying to, of course, achieve something. You can see that they wanted to win the stage. It was obvious. And Remco just completely out of nowhere, without really having any actual help or any sort of positioning, but without having any sort of amazing strategies or something, he was just the more explosive rider, the better rider. So I feel like this was just an amazing showcase of power. I feel like this is going to really shut up anyone who was saying he has no chance against Jonas, because of course this wasn't the hardest climb of all, but still you can see that guy has grit. And you can see it. When I was watching the climbs, I was like thinking, I didn't feel like he was, he looked that amazing. I feel like I was like, he's not, he doesn't look amazing. But then, he showed up, he showed out. Bravo to him. Amazing job by Remco Evenepoel. Another side note, La Vuelta just does not, let's say, stop disappointing us sometimes, because Remco Evenepoel, who is, he's going to the limit, he's finishing, he's fast, he's excited, adrenaline's pumping through his veins. He should just, be able to go to the finish line and not care what's going on behind the finish line. But then he ends up riding into this, I think it was some sort of media person. I do not really know who it was. I didn't really notice. It was some sort of woman, and he ended up crashing into her. I don't know, what are you doing? Can you not see the rider who's like crossing the finish line of La Vuelta? How can you miss him? How can you not see him? I was just so confused. I was just, it's another one of those, like, what can we do? Like, at this point, what can we do? I don't know what to tell you, because it feels like we're talking about what they did wrong today, and like, it doesn't even, like, why are we bothering? But other than that, I feel like this was a really nice, stage to kind of get us into the Vuelta, the GC fight, because of course there was some time gaps on the TTT, but now we're really in there. We're really going for the GC. The mountain started. Welcome to the Pyrenees. It's time to go. This is the Vuelta. This is not just some random race. It's time for chaos. It's time for fighting, and it's time for a GC fight. So I feel like this was a really, really interesting stage. Tomorrow, of course, we have not as much of, exciting GC stage, but still, I'm just really excited for this race. This kind of maybe gave me that extra bit of excitement of, like, that kind of moment. But, I'm starting a tangent here. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. I hope it kind of gave you some of my thoughts, my insight into what I think happened on the stage, and what I thought about the whole stage in general. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.